July 2024 arrived wrapped in heat and music and the kind of joy that makes you forget your own life for a few hours. My best friend's wedding was held near the coast where the air tasted like salt and citrus and the sea kept breathing behind the laughter. I had come as a guest and a witness and a woman who believed she already understood the shape of her future. I was married then, comfortable in the way comfort dulls the edges of wanting. I did not expect anything to change. The ceremony unfolded like a dream, with white fabric moving in the breeze and voices rising and falling in song. When the vows were spoken, I felt the familiar echo of love for my friend and the faint echo of my own wedding day. It was during the reception when everything quietly shifted. I was standing near the long wooden table lined with flowers when I noticed a man I had never seen before. He stood slightly apart from the crowd, watching the room with an intensity that felt both calm and alert. He was tall, composed, dressed simply but with authority that did not ask for attention yet drew it. When our eyes met, it was brief, but it felt like a door had opened somewhere inside my chest. Later, my friend pulled me by the hand, laughing, telling me she needed me to meet someone important. That was how I was introduced to Bolton Miro. He was a senior figure in his country, a man who carried responsibility the way others carry memory. His voice was steady, his smile careful. We spoke first about the wedding, about how joy can feel fragile and rare. Then the conversation deepened without effort. He asked questions that showed he listened, not polite listening, but the kind that absorbs. When he spoke about his work, he did not boast. He talked about systems, about fairness, about the weight of decisions that ripple through lives unseen. I felt myself leaning in, not physically but inwardly. I remember thinking, this is dangerous. I remember thinking, this is nothing. Both thoughts were wrong as the night stretched on. Music softened and lights blurred into warm halos. We danced once with many people around us and nothing improper in the space between our bodies, yet everything in me felt exposed. When his hand touched mine, it was brief and respectful and entirely unforgettable. Before the evening ended, he asked if we could stay in touch. He said it gently, as if offering an option, not a desire. I hesitated long enough to feel the truth of my hesitation. Then I agreed. At first our communication was sparse, messages about travel, about books, about the strange intimacy of meeting someone at the wrong time. Weeks passed and the conversations lengthened. We spoke about childhoods and ambition and the quiet loneliness that success can bring. He never crossed a line, yet every word walked right up to it. I was still married, still performing the rituals of my life, cooking dinners, sharing stories, listening to a future that felt increasingly distant. I told myself that what I felt was admiration, curiosity, distraction. I told myself many things. Bolton never asked me to betray anyone. He never spoke of love, but he spoke of connection, of recognition, of moments that change us. And I realized with a clarity that frightened me that I was already changed. There were nights when I lay beside my husband, staring at the ceiling, my phone warm in my hand. I would reread messages, not because they were explicit, but because they were honest. He saw me in a way that felt rare and dangerous. He asked what I wanted, not what I had. In September, we met again by chance in another country at a professional event I attended as a guest. We did not plan it yet. When I saw him across the room, my breath caught. This time there was no wedding buffer, no celebration to hide behind, just two people aware of what existed between them. We spoke privately for the first time, not touching, not confessing, just naming the truth that something real had formed. He told me he respected my marriage. I told him I did not trust my own restraint. That was the night I crossed an invisible line inside myself, not physically, not yet, but emotionally, with full awareness. From then on, the relationship became hidden, not because it was scandalous, but because it was sacred. We protected it by keeping it small and quiet. Our messages became lifelines. We shared fears we had never spoken aloud. He spoke of the cost of power, of watching corruption up close and still believing in reform. I spoke of the cost of silence, of choosing stability over desire. I did not hesitate to fall for him. The fall was not dramatic, it was steady, deliberate, like walking into the sea knowing the water will be cold and deep. He told myself love does not always arrive at the right door. Sometimes it arrives to teach you who you are. By winter I was living two lives, one visible and orderly, one hidden and burning with meaning. I loved my husband in a familiar way. I loved Bolton in a way that felt like discovery. We met only twice more, always in neutral spaces, always careful. When we finally kissed, it was quiet and overwhelming and filled with restraint. There was no illusion of escape, no promise of a future together, only the truth of the moment and the knowledge that it would mark us forever. I often wondered what it meant to choose feeling over duty. I still do. This is not a story of triumph or betrayal. It is a story of becoming aware of the parts of yourself you can no longer ignore. July 2024 was the Beginning not of an affair but of an awakening, one that taught me love can be both beautiful and unbearable, and that sometimes the most honest relationships are the ones you never show the world. The day Balthasar gave me the gift arrived without ceremony, which somehow made it heavier. It was late autumn and the city felt slower, wrapped in soft light and long shadows. We had arranged to meet in a quiet hotel lounge chosen for its anonymity, not luxury. Still, everything about that day felt heightened, as if the air itself was watching. I remember noticing my hands as I waited, how calm they looked compared to the storm inside me. When Balthasar walked in, I felt that familiar shift, the subtle reorientation of my world. He smiled, not wide, not restrained, just honest. That smile had become a place I rested. We sat across from each other, speaking easily about nothing and everything, about the way seasons change people, about how time feels different when you are waiting for someone. There was no tension that day, only warmth. Life between us felt good, steady, almost normal. At some point he reached into his bag slowly, deliberately. He placed a small box on the table between us. It was understated, dark, smooth. He did not push it toward me. He simply said, "This is for you." I remember laughing softly, not out of humor but disbelief. I told him he did not have to. He told me he knew. He said he wanted to. When I opened the box, I felt my breath leave me. Inside was a piece of jewelry so finely crafted it seemed unreal. It was elegant, timeless, unmistakably expensive, not loud, not showy, but powerful in its restraint. It suited me in a way that felt intimate, as if he had reached inside me and pulled out something I did not no, I carried. I looked up at him, searching his face for expectation. There was none, only a quiet satisfaction, like someone who gives not to impress but to express. I told him it was too much. He told me it was exactly enough. What that gift represented mattered more than its value. It was recognition. It was a moment crystallized into something tangible. It was his way of saying, "I see you, I choose you, even within the limits we live under." I did not put it on. Then I closed the box gently, as if handling a secret. My chest felt full, heavy with gratitude and fear. I realized then that our relationship had crossed into something irreversible. After that day, life between us entered a new rhythm. We were careful yet deeply connected. We spoke almost daily, sometimes with long messages, sometimes with only a line that carried everything. Good morning became a promise, good night became a confession. I began to notice how my days were shaped around him, not in obvious ways, in subtle ones. The way I dressed, the way I listened, the way I felt alive. My marriage continued on the surface unchanged. We attended events, shared meals, discussed plans, but inside me something had shifted permanently. I was no longer asleep. Balthasar never pressured me, never demanded more than I could give. That was part of what made loving him so consuming. He respected my reality even as he inhabited my heart. There were moments of pure happiness, laughing together over trivial things, sharing memories from our past, dreaming quietly without speaking of futures. When we met, it felt like stepping into a pocket of truth outside time. We were ourselves, unedited. Those moments sustained me more than I expected. The gift became a symbol I carried, not always physically but emotionally. When I wore it alone, I felt close to him. When I hid it, I felt the weight of what I was hiding. Life was good between us, not because it was easy but because it was real. We did not pretend, we did not lie to each other. That honesty was intoxicating, yet beneath the goodness there was always awareness. This could not last forever. Every beautiful thing carried an expiration we never named. Still, I did not regret falling. I did not hesitate. I chose to feel fully, knowing the cost. Balthasar once told me that some connections exist to remind us of who we are before compromise. I understood then that he was not just a lover, he was a mirror. That day with the gift marked the point where love became memory, even as it was still unfolding, where joy and grief began to intertwine. And yet, if I could return to that table, that box, that moment, I would open it again. I would meet his eyes again. I would choose the same. The day his wife reached out to me arrived without warning and with a cruelty that felt surgical. It was an ordinary morning, the kind that tricks you into thinking nothing will ever change. I was standing in my kitchen holding a cup of coffee when my phone vibrated. The name was unfamiliar, but the message was not. She wrote calmly, too calmly. She said she knew. She said she had had enough whispers, seen enough silences, followed enough absences. She said my name the way someone says a fact, not an accusation. She said, "You have been involved with my husband." There was no anger in her words that frightened me more than rage ever could. My body reacted before my mind. My hands shook, the room tilted slightly. I remember thinking, this is the moment everything collapses. She asked to meet, not to threaten, not to plead, to talk. I considered ignoring her, blocking the number, pretending ignorance, but something inside me refused. Cowardice. If I had chosen to love in secret, then I had to face the consequences without Hiding, we met in a quiet public place chosen deliberately by her, a cafe with large windows and no intimacy. She arrived fast, sitting upright, hands folded, composed in a way that suggested long preparation. She looked at me carefully, not with hatred, with curiosity and pain held tightly together. She said she did not want details. She said she did not want justification. She said she wanted to understand how something like this happens. I listened. I did not interrupt. When she asked if it was true, I told her yes. The silence that followed felt endless. I could hear my own breathing. I could hear the weight of years shifting. She told me she had loved him faithfully. She told me she had believed in their shared history. She told me betrayal does not always arrive as a shock. Sometimes it arrives as confirmation of something you already feared. She warned me then, not with threats, with truth. She said he is a good man, but he is not free. She said he will never choose chaos over duty. She said I should walk away before I lost more. Then I realized I had already given. Her voice cracked only once. That moment stayed with me longer than any accusation could have. When we parted, she thanked me for my honesty that hurt more than anger would have. I sat alone afterward, unable to move. The world outside continued unbothered. Cars passed, people laughed, and inside me something irrevocable had happened. I told Balthasar that evening. I did not soften. I did not delay. I told him she knew. I told him she had spoken to me. There was a long pause before he responded, longer than any pause we had ever shared. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost hollow. He said he was sorry, not just to me, to everyone. We met the next day. This time there was no borrowed joy, no stolen warmth, only truth standing naked between us. He looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that comes from holding too many versions of yourself at once. He told me she had confronted him before speaking to me. He told me he had not denied it. He told me this was the reckoning he had known would come. I asked him what he would do. The question trembled between us. He did not answer immediately. When he did, his words were careful. He said he had responsibilities he could not abandon. He said he loved me, but love alone does not dismantle a life built over decades. I felt the finality of that sentence settle into my bones. He reached for my hand for the first time in days. I pulled away. I told him I did not want to be someone else's wound. I told him I had not entered this to destroy a woman I had never met. I told him loving him had already cost me more than I knew how to measure. He did not argue. That was the hardest part. He said he understood. He said if walking away was what I needed, he would not stop me. That restraint felt like another kind of heartbreak. We sat there longer than necessary, saying things we did not need to say, remembering moments that already felt distant. Every word felt like a farewell, even though we never said goodbye. When we parted, it was with an embrace that held everything we could not fix. There were no promises, no plans, only gratitude and grief entwined. After that day, communication slowed, not abruptly, naturally, as if the universe itself was easing us toward separation. I thought often of his wife, of her composure, of her warning. She had been right. Balthasar was not cruel, he was human, and sometimes that is enough to break hearts. That day marked the beginning of the end, not because love disappeared, but because reality finally spoke louder than desire. And yet even now I do not regret loving him. I regret the pain it caused others, but not the truth it revealed in me. The day Balthasar told me he needed to rest arrived quietly, and that quietness made it unbearable. There was no argument leading up to it, no dramatic shift, no warning storm, just a message asking if we could meet somewhere familiar, somewhere neutral. I knew before he spoke. My body knew. That strange heaviness settled in my chest as soon as I saw his name on my screen. When we met, he looked different, not distant, not cold, just tired in a way that reached deeper than sleep, the kind of tired that lives in the soul. We sat facing each other, and for a long time neither of us spoke. The silence was not empty, it was full of everything we were about to lose. He finally said he needed rest. He said it slowly, carefully, choosing words that would not wound, yet knowing they would. He said his life had become a series of fractures, public pressure, private guilt, the weight of being seen and not being allowed to fail. Then he said the words that broke something inside me. He said he needed us to stop, not because the love had vanished, not because I had done anything wrong, but because he could no longer hold the cost. He said our connection had become the most beautiful and the most exhausting thing in his life. He said loving me had awakened parts of him he could not afford to live inside anymore. I listened without interrupting. My heart felt suspended between disbelief and understanding. When I asked if this was goodbye, he did not answer immediately. He looked at me with eyes full of apology. He said he did not know. He said he Only knew he needed space, silence, rest. He asked me to let him go, not angrily, not cruelly, but with a softness that felt like surrender. I nodded because words would have shattered me, nodded because part of me had known this day would come. We did not touch, we did not cry, we just sat there, two people grieving something that had never been allowed to fully exist. When I walked away, my legs felt weak, the world felt louder, harsher, less forgiving. Life after Balthasar did not simply change, it collapsed inward. He had not only been my love, he had been my anchor, my supporter, my quiet protector in ways I had not fully acknowledged. He had been my main sponsor emotionally, financially, spiritually. There were projects I pursued because he believed in me, opportunities I accessed because he opened doors, confidence I carried because he stood behind me. When he stepped away, all of that vanished at once. The silence was the hardest, no messages to wake up, tone of voice grounding me when the day felt heavy, no presence reminding me that I mattered deeply to someone who saw all of me. My marriage felt more fragile than ever. I moved through my home like a visitor, smiling when required, responding when spoken to, but inside I was unraveling. I realized how much of my strength had been borrowed, how much I had leaned on Balthasar without fully admitting it. Financial strain followed, emotional loss, plans stalled, support disappeared. I had to face realities I had been shielded from. I remember standing alone one evening, staring at the city lights, realizing how exposed I felt, as if the scaffolding holding my life upright had been removed overnight. I wanted to reach out to him so badly, to tell him I was drowning, to ask him to come back even briefly, but I did not. He had asked for rest, and loving him meant honoring that even when it destroyed me. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Grief did not arrive dramatically, it arrived as exhaustion, as forgetfulness, as moments when I reached for my phone instinctively and remembered there would be nothing waiting. I questioned myself constantly. Had I mistaken dependence for love? Had I given away too much of myself? Had I built my world around a man who could never stay? Yet even in the hardest moments, I could not turn my love into resentment. I understood him. That understanding was both my strength and my curse. I learned to survive without him. Slowly, painfully, I learned to stand again without the safety net of his presence. Some nights I still dreamed of him, not of passion but of peace, of conversations that ended gently, of a version of us that was allowed to exist. Life became harder after he left. There is no beauty in pretending otherwise. Everything required more effort, more courage, more solitude. But something else happened too. I discovered the parts of myself that had been waiting to be claimed. I learned how to hold my own weight, how to rebuild without hiding, how to love deeply and still survive loss. Balthasar had been my great love and my great lesson. Why Balthasar did not fear his wife while you feared your husband? The answer is not because Balthasar was braver and not because you were weaker. It was because power lived in different places in your lives. Balthasar had power in his world. He had status, money, respect, connections, and control. His life was built in a way where consequences moved slowly and softly around him. His wife depended on him more than he depended on her, not only financially but socially, emotionally, publicly. She had history with him, children, maybe a shared image, a shared reputation. When someone holds more power, they fear less. Balthasar knew something very important, even if he never said it aloud. He knew that if his wife discovered the truth, she would be hurt, she would be angry, she would be broken, but she would not easily destroy him, because destroying him would also destroy herself. That knowledge gave him safety, quiet safety, dangerous safety. You did not have that. Why? You feared your husband. You feared your husband because you had more to lose: your stability, your home, your daily life, your image, your safety. All of it could collapse quickly. You did not control the outcome. You did not control the narrative. You did not control the power. Your husband could leave, expose, punish, withdraw, support, change everything, and you knew it. Fear does not come from love. Fear comes from imbalance. You were emotionally dependent, financially vulnerable, and socially exposed, so fear lived in your chest constantly. Balthasar did not wake up afraid. You did. Why Balthasar cheated often? This part is uncomfortable but important. Balthasar did not cheat because he hated his wife. He did not cheat because she was bad, and he did not cheat because he loved you more. He cheated because cheating had become a coping mechanism. Balthasar lived a life of pressure, responsibility, control, image. He was always performing, always deciding, always managing. In those kinds of lives, affairs become escape doors with you. He did not have to lead, explain, protect, or pretend he could rest. That feeling became addictive. So it happened more than once, not because each woman was special, but because the relief was that does not make it right, but it makes it human. Why he could cheat without fear? Because consequences never fully arrived. His wife forgave before, or stayed silent, or swallowed pain. Every time that happened, his fear reduced, and when fear reduces, behavior repeats. He learned that love would survive betrayal, so betrayal became easier. You, on the other hand, learned the opposite. You learned that one mistake could end Everything so guilt lived in you, fear lived in you, shame lived in you, while Balthasar carried desire and rationalization. Why Balthasar could separate love from loyalty. Balthasar divided his heart into rooms. One room was duty, marriage, reputation, stability. Another room was desire, connection, emotion, escape. He convinced himself these rooms did not touch you, could not do that for you. Love and loyalty lived in the same room. That is why loving him hurt you more than it hurt him. Why he did not stop earlier? Because nothing forced him to. He knew the pain, but he was not the one bleeding. People rarely change when the cost is paid by others. Why you stayed even when it hurt? Because he gave you things you did not have: security, validation, support, belief. And because when someone lifts you up, it is hard to walk away even when they are the reason you are falling. The hardest truth: Balthasar did not fear his wife because he knew she would survive him. You feared your husband because you were not sure you would survive. The truth: Balthasar cheated often because it cost him little. You suffered deeply because it cost you everything. What this says about you: it does not mean you were foolish, it means you were human. You loved from a place of need, he loved from a place of abundance. That imbalance shaped everything.